Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. It's Friday. We are lucky Matt Continetti is in the house. He is a scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, contributing columnist with Commentary Magazine and with the Free Press, and he writes books as well. So he just never stops. Matt, there's so much to cover. I want to start first with your thoughts on the death of the Pope, which of course is the rapt attention of 1.4 billion Catholics, but I don't know if it matters much outside of that community. What do you think?
Well, I think it matters a great deal, Hugh. I mean, Catholicism, huge religion in the country and in the world, and Pope Francis a controversial figure, not only within that faith community, but also in politics at large. I think people have eulogized him appropriately, focusing on his pastoral attitudes, his concern for the poor, his attempt to be a pope who reaches all people. But the more political aspects of his papacy also can't be ignored, especially as the College of Cardinals meets after the funeral to choose his successor.
135 cardinals, sometime between May 5 and May 11. One of the papabili, the one that intrigues me a lot, is the Patriarch of Jerusalem, Matt Continetti, Cardinal Pizzaballa. And he has been there for 20 years, and he's a man of some significant courage. After the 10/7 massacre, he offered himself up as a hostage to replace a hostage, but he's also been there for 20 years. What would that, it's my bridge to my next story about intense fighting in Gaza underway right now. What would that message send if they actually tapped the 60-year-old fella from Jerusalem?
Well, one, 60 years old, relatively youthful for an incoming pope. I think that would be a good sign for the church. Two, coming from outside continental Europe, especially Jerusalem, not only the holiest city in three religions, but also a just geostrategic location. Just thinking about it as you were speaking, Hugh, I immediately thought of Karol Wojtyla, Pope John Paul the Great, who, when he was elected pope, was also useful and was also coming from Poland, coming from a country under Soviet dominion. And of course, Pope John Paul's legacy includes his advocacy of human rights, of the solidarity movement in Poland, and ultimately working with Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, bringing down the Soviet Union.
You know, Matt, it's been since 1995 that the Catholic Church has had a pope who was 75 years or younger. So it's been 30 years of old guys running the church. There is some resistance to younger popes because John Paul's pontificate was so long, John Paul II, Saint John Paul. But I really do think they're going to lose momentum, touch, if they continue to fixate on 75-year-old guys running the church. I mean, do you share that? I'm on the inside as a Catholic, hoping for energy and some
Sure.
unity. What do you think about youth versus age?
Well, we had an experience in American politics for 4 years of the risks of having a leader who is old and out of touch and perhaps debilitated in some fashion by age-related conditions. So, no, I don't think any smart observer would want that for the Catholic Church. You know, it's an interesting point for the Catholic Church right now, Hugh, as we all know. One of the paradoxes of Francis's papacy was that he was coded or read as a progressive, but if you think about young Catholics in America today in particular, they are trending to the right. They are much more traditionalist. And of course, the growth in the Catholic Church is particularly significant in places like sub-Saharan Africa. And that church, that part of the church rather, is extremely conservative as well. So I think the Cardinals need to get this right. They can't double down on the type of kind of uh, progressivism that Francis represented, because that could risk ultimately deep fissures within the Catholic Church. I think they should look beyond Europe, and they should also look to someone who can perhaps moderate between Francis's openness, but also kind of the more doctrinal conservatism of his two predecessors, JP2 and Benedict.
It's going to be so. Eventually, stories are always slip out about how it goes. But of these 135 cardinals, a lot of them have not even met each other. I really do not know how you get to yes. 2/3 vote, by the way. It's sort of worse than the filibuster. So getting to yes, that could be a long conclave. We will see. I'll be right back with Matt Continetti. We're going to talk during the break about Israel and then come back and talk about India and Pakistan. Don't miss any of it. If you do, make sure you get the podcast for the weekend, Highly Concentrated Hugh, the big weekend pod. Stay tuned. I am back with Matt Continetti. You can follow him on X, by the way, at Continetti, and listen to him most mornings at the commentary pod, though he wasn't on today. Matt, let me ask you about the intense fighting that has broken out in Gaza and Defense Minister Katz saying war has casualties involved. It's going to be very intense. I think that between his statement today, the reports of the fighting, and Prime Minister Netanyahu's statement on Saturday night, I believe, last week, we're in for a real battle in Gaza, sort of a Fallujah kind of thing. Do you think that?
It's certainly a possibility. The war had been in a lull for some time, Hugh, in recent weeks because of new leadership with the IDF, and also because President Trump is in office, supplying and supporting Israel in its war on Hamas. The Israel Defense Forces have upped the tempo of operations in Gaza, and that's led to increased fighting and could be more urban, dangerous warfare as these IDF troops kind of seek out and destroy the remnants of Hamas. Hamas continues to be under a tremendous pressure. I would like to see more pressure being brought, especially on Egypt and Qatar, who have been sympathetic to Hamas, also Turkey, to isolate it diplomatically. But I do think here, if Prime Minister Netanyahu, the National Security Council, and the IDF leadership are in agreement, we do have the potential to deal the death blow to Hamas in the coming weeks.
Now, Matt, I'm wondering, have you read Jonathan Foreman's piece in the new issue of Commentary? I heard him on the podcast this week. I went out and immediately read the article. It's stunning, actually, how self-deceived the Israelis allowed themselves to become about Hamas, its capabilities, and how it would wage war. It's really stunning how bad it is.
Yeah, this was the concepcia that
Yep.
really governed Israel's national security strategy for many years until October 7th, 2023. You know, one thing that's striking to me about Jonathan's article, and it's of a piece of a lot of the reporting that's going on into the failures predating Hamas's invasion of Israel on that horrible day in 2023. And yet the war still isn't concluded, and Israel has challenges with Iran. So even though I think Israel's made great strides and improved its situation by fighting Hamas, really debilitating it in many ways, debilitating Hezbollah, knocking out Iran's air defense network, of course, watching as the Syrian dictator falls and then seizing the moment in taking territory to enhance the Israel defense, there's still outlying questions. And so I hope that these criticisms and reporting can help to inform the strategy, not just of Israel, but also of the United States, in order to make the world more secure and free.
A follow-up coming up on that. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be back with Matt Continetti. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt with Matt Continetti. It's our Friday roundup. Matt, President Trump sat down with Time magazine reporters, and one of them asked him, is Bibi Netanyahu going to drag you into a war? Trump's response, and it's not verbatim, but it's close, is no. I won't be dragged into a war, but if we don't get a deal, I'll be leading the way. He said this is like the sixth time he has made it this stark. And I think I've come to understand the deal as meaning genuinely dismantle the centrifuges and give us your enriched uranium. Is that how you understand the deal?
At this point, there's still a lot that's in motion, and the technical teams between the United States and Iran are planning to meet this weekend, so we might know more at the end of the weekend. But I think your description is pretty accurate, Hugh. I think there's an argument within the administration about whether do we completely uproot the Iranian nuclear program as part of a deal, and the only way they get nuclear material is if it's shipped into the country? Or do we allow some level of low grade enrichment? I, of course, prefer the former option if we're going to have a deal. I don't trust the Iranians to enrich any uranium, but that's still yet to be determined. I think you hit on the key point here, which is that in the Time magazine interview, as he said in many places and many times over the past month, President Trump, his patience is not unlimited, and he is saying he would prefer to have a deal that ends the Iranian nuclear program. But if not, he is prepared to use military action to set that program back decades, if not longer.
Now, I've talked with a number of people from your podcast and other experts as well. It is not that hard to put a verification process into place. Libya did it, South Africa did it, Ukraine did it in the days of loose nukes after the collapse of the Soviet Union. You can let people have access. But the JCPOA, I want people to, they did not have access to military bases. That won't fly, Matt. Do you think that minimum standard of inspection is understood and embraced by Team Trump?
I hope it is, and
Okay.
I don't think that President Trump wants a repeat of the Obama nuclear deal. He ran against the Obama nuclear deal in 2016. He said again and again it was the worst deal in history, and it was. And so that's his mentality. Ultimately, Trump will decide whether the deal that's agreed to, if it is agreed to, is in our interest. And I think he would say to himself, well, we have to have inspections on the military bases, or it's not a fair deal for the United States. So there's a lot that we don't know in this process, but I think what we have to avoid here is a repeat of the experience under Obama. We have to remember Iran's primary interest, Hugh, is in preserving the regime, preserving the world's largest sponsor of terrorism, preserving this Islamic theocracy that has done so much harm to the United States and to our allies over 40 some years.
Now,
So they might
Matt,
say, let's drag it out. But Trump will be prepared to call them on it.
that's what I hope. I really think he's put himself out there so many times with "there will be bombs" that it's very hard for him to hedge that rhetoric now. Before we go to the break, Matt, and talk about India and Pakistan, Yale has got an encampment. Harvard has gone to lawsuit. I think Harvard is just trying to argue that they have the right to violate the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and I don't think their lawsuit's going to work. But Yale is allowing it again, and I've seen video. It's more assault, imminent fear of an unpermitted touching, as well as obstruction of campus, and it's really quite remarkable. What do you think Yale should do, and what do you think they will do? It's not going to go away.
Yale should threaten these protesters with arrest, not through any campus judicial proceeding, but by the New Haven Police Department. And if they cancel the permits for these demonstrations and make such threats, I think that you'll see some of these encampments go away soon. That's the appropriate course of action. Do these administrations have the stomach for it? That's the question. I think one of the benefits of Trump's aggressive policy on anti-Semitism is these administrations know that if they don't have a hard line against the students, Trump is going to have a hard line against them.
And I like that he started with Harvard because they got enough money to take care of themselves. They got more lawyers than most law firms have lawyers, and they can take care of themselves. I think they're staking out an untenable position. Now, I'm all for taking their tax exempt status. I just think they're Bob Jones with longer history. What do you think about tax exempt status? Some people worry about slippery slope. I'm too used to slippery slopes to worry about them anymore.
Yeah, well, we've been sliding down the slippery slopes for a long time, right?
Yep.
Look, I think it's about process. I think that's a completely legitimate question, especially given what we know about Harvard's behavior over the year, whether their failure to police their students, their failure to abide by federal law as it regards the civil rights of American citizens constitutes the deprivation of tax exempt status for that institution. What I just want to see is we make sure that we've crossed our T's, we dot our I's, so that this can't be challenged and overturned in court.
Do you think that the Department of Justice under AG Bondi has crossed their T's, dotted their I's with regards to the arrests of Judge Hannah Dugan today and yesterday of former Judge Cano, both of whom are alleged to have assisted illegal immigrants in evading a legitimate ICE operation?
From what I know of the stories, I think so. I think the New Mexico case in particular is pretty incredible. And there are a lot of details about that. This latest judge out of Milwaukee, less is known immediately. But I think that this type of behavior actually isn't unsurprising when you consider some of the radical rulings that have been coming from lower court judges during the Trump administration, the nationwide injunctions just halting policy across the country because the politics of the judge are different than the politics of the elected president of the
And
United
these are
States.
state judges. I want to remind all of our
Right.
Steelers fans there's this thing called the supremacy clause. Federal law wins in a showdown with state law, and state judges have to yield to federal authorities. And if they get arrested, there's no reason. Judges are not above the law. Donald Trump had to show up and go through trial in Manhattan. I'm talking with Matt Continetti. One more segment off air. We'll put it on the podcast, maybe try and play a little bit later about India and Pakistan, what John Ellis and I began talking the program about. Stand by. Welcome back to Matt Continetti. Matt, my first guest for most of the big weekend pod is usually John Ellis, who founded and edits news items, which I read every day. It's a comprehensive summary of the news. He is covering the heck out of India and Pakistan because of the terrorist attack in Kashmir that killed, I think, 28 people. And now the Indians and the Pakistanis are exchanging fire. I don't think America's even alert to this story. Do you?
No. No. Americans don't pay much attention to Indo-Pakistani relations. And unfortunately, that could come back to haunt us if a war breaks out between these two massive states, both putative U.S. allies. I mean, for a lot of the history of the two nations, America preferred Pakistan over India. But of course, in recent years, America has shifted towards supporting India. Vice President Vance just there last week. So we'll be caught in the middle if hostilities escalate from where they are now.
And I think there have been 3 India-Pakistan wars, and I believe a couple of them escalated rather quickly, as the old saying goes. And they're both nuclear states. We used to mediate these. I don't think we're mediating this one. And I don't know, maybe Steve Witkoff's on a plane to Kashmir. What do you think?
Well, but he's in Moscow. I think then he's going to Muscat in Oman, and so yeah, just go to India or go to Jalalabad, Pakistan, and try to add that to the Witkoff portfolio. I don't know. These two powers are incredibly hostile to one another. They are both nuclear armed states. There has definitely been a problem in Kashmir and terrorism against Hindus in India, and I think America, is in a tricky position here because we have been allied with them both for so long, but of course our ties with India continue to deepen, and the U.S. Indian relationship is really going to be very important over the coming century, as both countries have an interest in containing China.
Yeah, we're tilting towards them. Matt, I lied to you. I got to keep you to ask you one more question about Jonathan Foreman's piece in this context. So don't go anywhere. I'll be right back with Matt Continetti. Welcome back, America. Final quick segment with Matt Continetti of Commentary, AEI, the Free Beacon, the Free Press, wherever you go, there's Matt Continetti. Matt, the piece that Jonathan Foreman, you and I referenced earlier, is about what Israel failed to believe was possible. We're just talking about India-Pakistan. A nuclear war or a nuclear exchange is actually possible between them. Do you think and hypersonic missiles makes a Pearl Harbor possible any day, any time? I don't know that American government thinks outside the box the way that Israel didn't, or whether or not you think we are pretty well prepared for all threats. What do you think?
Well, I think there are people who think outside the box. I think President Trump thinks outside the box for sure. He's at the top of our government. But the fact is, Hugh, there are so many threats right now, right? There's the threat in Iran. There's the threat in Ukraine, Russia. There's the growing threat of China and its hostile behavior just in the past week around Taiwan. And now we have another potential flashpoint in India and Pakistan. Pakistan, by the way, has been fighting with Afghanistan off and on as the Taliban and people fleeing the Taliban have caused terrorist attacks inside Pakistan. So the world is at the threshold of a global conflict. There's no question about it. So what does that mean? It means that the United States needs to be strong. It means we need to have a big defense budget. We need to be proactive against these threats, and we need to be engaged. An engagement that is, I think, more than Steve Witkoff traveling around the world. But it's a full court press in order to say that America is not going away. Yes, we'll have our hemispheric defense, but yes, we're going to try to rebalance the global trading system. But more important, our interests is that our interest in keeping America safe means that we take an active role in keeping the rest of the world safe as well. I think that's a message that's important for many people to hear, and I hope we hear it in the coming weeks.
You know, I like to think of Trump's 10% tariff as being basically a tax on the world so that America can keep the peace. It's just, to me, the cost of doing business in a secure world with freedom of navigation. He hadn't sold it that way, Matt, but I think it would be much easier to sell if we just said, no one's pulling their weight. We got to do all this. Everyone's going to chip in. Have you heard that argument made anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, the closest he makes it is, we have these troops all based all around the world. We should get something in return. And maybe the 10% tariff could be framed in such a way. There is a big contingent in the Trump administration that thinks that America should just focus on the Western Hemisphere, just focus on the southern border. And my message to them is that might work for a time. But as we can see in the world today, things are growing more dangerous. And eventually, the lesson of history is all of those problems show up on our doorstep.
Yeah, there is no abroad anymore. Hypersonic missiles, there is no abroad. Everything is within 10 minutes of everything else. Matt Continetti, thank you for joining me at length on this Friday. And I appreciate your taking time this weekend. Welcome back from your vacation. Talk to you again soon.